I initially wasn't going to pick up Aliens Fireteam Elite. I'm a massive fan of the Alien franchise, with the first two movies being some of my favorites of all time, and I was very interested in this game. But after seeing the middling review scores and the lukewarm reception it got, I decided to pass on the game. However, it came out when I was on break before going back to college this fall. I was bored and I figured it would at least be a few hours of fun, so I caved and I got it. And I am so glad I did. Aliens Fireteam Elite took me completely by surprise. I thought it would be a fun game for a few hours that I would get bored of rather quickly. But nothing could be further from the truth. Instead, I've had a great time with the game. I'm at the point now where I've unlocked and maxed out every weapon and class as well as unlocking all the cosmetics. I've played the game a lot. The only thing left for me to do is to push into the extreme and insane difficulties, which I absolutely would love to do. Point being, I love this game and I wanted to share my perspective on it. Firstly, let me address that this game is far from perfect. It has plenty of flaws and it isn't for everyone. The game is relatively short if you only play through it once, offering only 12 missions at launch, which generally will take around 4 to 6 hours to complete. The mission objectives have very little variety, often boiling down to go to this room, press a button, defend the room, move to the next room, repeat. The story is also very forgettable. It's functional, but it never really comes into its own. That isn't aided by the total lack of cutscenes and the fact that the characters don't even move their mouths when they talk.
I don't know all the details, and you know what? It ain't my place to ask.
Story really isn't the focus here. I'll quickly mention that there was a prequel novel released for this game called Alien Infiltrator. I'm currently listening to it as an audiobook. It might make the story more interesting, but I'm not far enough to know yet. Not that it would be an excuse for the game's story, even if it did. The matchmaking system is far from optimal. There is no voice or text chat built into the PC version, and on top of all of that, the game is notoriously buggy, or at least was at launch. I never had any game-breaking issues, but I did have plenty of audio and visual bugs at a pretty consistent rate. After the Season 1 patch, at least for me, the game has been way more stable, but it still has its fair share of issues. Okay, with all the negatives out of the way, let's talk about what this game does right. And there is a lot to talk about. One thing you've probably noticed from the background footage at this point is that the art of this game is great. From the engineer ship based on Prometheus to the alien hive based on Aliens, everything feels incredibly authentic to the films. This game feels like Alien through and through. The visual design is outstanding, but so is the audio design. The xenomorphs sound great, and the pulse rifle sounds like it was pulled right out of the film and put into this game. It's perfect. The music does a good job of capturing the sound of the films, but just like the story, it never really comes into its own. Moving on from sound design, there are tons of Easter eggs scattered throughout the levels, like the power lifter in your base. Challenge cards are often named after a quote from one of the movies, and there are dozens of decals and emotes that are references. I also really appreciate that this game embraces all the Alien films, even the ones people don't like Alien Resurrection, with references like the challenge card, "They'll breed, you'll die."
She'll breed. You'll die.
While I'm not generally a fan of what Ridley Scott's prequels have done to the franchise, those films look incredible artistically speaking. Except for that, but we don't talk about that. Joking aside, it is awesome to see Prometheus and Covenant themed environments brought to life, as they are stunning, regardless of if you like the films or not. The incredible visual and audio design, plus the abundance of references, leads to this game feeling like a celebration of the Alien franchise as a whole, and it is clear that the devs behind this game have the utmost respect for this IP. Okay, so it looks, feels, and sounds like Alien, but does it feel good to shoot stuff? And I'd say hell yeah. The gameplay loop that Cold Iron has created here works really well. There is a vast array of weapons to choose from. Granted, these guns aren't the most incredible feeling weapons in gaming, but they are certainly fun to use. In the game, you fight off waves of xenomorphs. There are a bunch of different types that fill out all the basic archetypes. The runner, based off Alien 3's design, which is the fodder enemy, the long-range spitter, the exploding bursters, and so on. The most unique enemy is the drone, based on the design from the original film. It will jump you at just the right moment and then run away only to come back and jump you again. The enemy types aren't anything crazy, but they do enough to keep the gameplay varied. The classes in this game are really well defined, and they have very distinct playstyles. From the Demolisher, who specializes in AoE damage, to the Technician, who is more focused on crowd control. The biggest compliment that I can give these classes is that I miss each class when we don't have one on our team. And no class ever feels mandatory, at least up through intense difficulty. The missions on offer don't change very much in each replay. There are minor variations in each level, but it's not enough to keep the levels feeling fresh. I would say progressing through this game is more akin to raiding in an MMORPG, where you know what mechanics are going to happen. There is slight variation on each pool, but it's undeniably the same fight. For me, this isn't an issue, as I actually like this approach, especially when trying harder difficulties, but it definitely does hurt the replay value and will likely be an issue for some. Underpinning a really fun gameplay formula is extremely well thought out progression systems. For the sake of time, I won't go super in depth on all of these, but let's talk about a few. Challenge cards are awesome. Basically, these are cards that add modifiers to your run, like medkits are disabled, class abilities are disabled, or all the enemies in the mission are turned into weaker versions of the exploding enemy type, in exchange for varying amounts of extra credits and experience. This risk-reward structure adds a lot of variety to farming missions repeatedly, and encourages you to take on harder challenges for even more rewards. These modifiers quite often change your approach to the mission in pretty significant ways, and some of the rarer challenge cards that you can get are actually positive modifiers to help you with the harder difficulties. Unlocking and upgrading gear as a whole is a pretty simple and straightforward process that you can completely finish. Each gun has 4 levels. Just get XP, and as the gun levels up, you'll get extra perks for it. You can also add 3 attachments to each weapon, and that's all there is to it. This game isn't trying to be a looter shooter that will keep you hooked for hundreds of hours with random loot drops. It instead opts for a very simple and deterministic process that's just fun to go through. It doesn't take very much time to unlock everything from the store and just be able to focus on leveling what you want to play with. If you only want to level a few guns, you don't have to level more than that, but if you want to level up a multitude of guns or classes, the time investment required is pretty darn reasonable. Yeah, it takes some grinding, but it always feels like you're progressing at a reasonable rate. This made unlocking everything and leveling it all up a great experience, because I felt like my time was being respected, and hell, I was having fun playing the game. The final thing I want to talk about with regards to progression are the perk boards. This is your class upgrade system. It seems complicated at first glance, but it's really quite simple once you get your head around it. Basically, you fill up these slots with perks, and you link perks to certain abilities, and that changes the way that the class functions, from reducing an ability cooldown to completely changing the function of an ability. It's pretty simple to understand, but still provides a fun and engaging upgrade system with lots of depth, and I quite like it. I would be remiss if I didn't touch on the difficulty settings of this game. There are 5 different difficulties: casual, standard, intense, extreme, and insane. This game's no joke. Even on standard difficulty, it can still be tough, especially solo. However, as you ramp things up, it will only get harder and more intense. One of the main differences in the higher difficulties is that friendly fire is actually enabled, and a fair number of these levels are in tight, confined spaces, meaning that it is very easy to shoot your own teammates if you aren't coordinated. Coordination is easily the most important part of the higher difficulties, as you will need to communicate with your teammates to get anywhere. While the game fails to capture the same fear level as the Aliens movie does, it does get closer on higher difficulties as xenomorphs become a lot more threatening and the game becomes far more tense. It's still kinda silly that 3 Marines managed to kill hundreds upon hundreds of xenomorphs each mission, but for the sake of fun and the power fantasy, I'll accept it. Finally, let's talk about the way that Cold Iron has gone about monetizing this game and what the future holds for Aliens Fireteam Elite. The monetization here is actually fantastic. If you pay the base price of $40, you get access to the base game, which comes with tons of free cosmetics, and you also get access to all the future content that will be added later down the line. There are no microtransactions in the traditional sense, instead you have cosmetic bundles. You can buy these individually, or if you get the season pass, which is $35, you'll get everything. You will get all the cosmetic bundles that exist now, and all the cosmetic bundles that are going to be added in the next 4 seasons. The Hard Marine pack is the only thing that isn't included in this, but it's only $4. All in all, I think this is a really fair and pro-consumer monetization model. You can get extra cosmetics if you want, but they aren't selling skins for like $5 each. You get everything for a fairly reasonable price, which I vastly prefer personally. I already picked up the Deluxe Edition upgrade, which is the same thing as the Season Pass, because I love this game and I want to support the devs. I also really like the new Weyland Yutani skins. The promise of free future content is great, and while we don't know exactly what it's going to be, I think it's fair to expect new weapons, new levels, and a new class from time to time. The first season brought the Phalanx class and 4 new weapons. I really hope that future seasons bring in new levels, as if they don't, I think the longevity of this game is in jeopardy, but as it stands, I can't wait to see what updates the devs have in store. There are a few things I didn't touch on yet that didn't really fit eloquently into the video anywhere, so I'm just going to rapid fire it all off here. I've played this game both solo and with friends. While playing with friends is definitely the better experience, I think playing solo or with randoms can still be a good time. If you're an Aliens fan, I wouldn't let the co-op thing necessarily dissuade you. If you play solo, you can play with 2 synthetic bots. They are fine for casual and standard difficulties, but beyond that, you really need to find actual people to play with. Throughout the campaign, you will fight some other enemy types besides xenomorphs, mainly synthetics and mutants. While I don't think these factions are nearly as good as the xenomorphs, they definitely provide a nice change of pace, especially when they are weaved in with xenos. However, there are 2 missions, 2-3 and 3-3, that focus predominantly on these factions, and I don't find myself replaying these missions very often, as they just aren't as fun to me. Finally, there's a horde mode in the game, but unfortunately it only has 1 map at the time of recording, and I personally haven't looked too deep into it. I think you get a few cosmetics from it, and I think that's it, but yeah. Okay, conclusion time. Look, this game isn't perfect, and it's definitely not for everyone, but I have absolutely loved the time I have spent with the game thus far, and I absolutely will be returning to this game whenever new content gets added, and if I can convince some more friends to get into the game, I will definitely be pushing into extreme and insane difficulties. If you're only going to play through this game one time, then no, it's not really worth the $40 price tag at the moment. Maybe wait for it to go on sale or for more levels to be added later down the line. But if you end up repeating the campaign and pushing into harder content, then I think you'll definitely get your value for money here. As a massive Alien fan, I adore this game. I had an absolute blast with it, and I cannot wait to play it more. Judging the game as a standalone horde shooter, on the other hand, I think the game's very competent, yet it's mediocre in a lot of ways. What really elevates this game for me is that alien aesthetic, as it really does complement the gameplay extremely well. This game knows what it wants to be, and it does it well. Aliens Fireteam Elite isn't gonna blow your mind, but it is a damn fun game. I've had a great time with the game, and I hope it does really well and gets new content for years to come. There's so much potential for new locations, new levels, and new enemy types. I can't wait to see what the devs come up with, and I will certainly be here to play it.